morning.
Morning.
About a month ago, Beth Brockman and I attended a conference where the seeds of this Women of Faith Sunday were planted. When I returned home, I started talking with Pat about our ideas and specifically about who would preach. For several weeks, I continued to tell him that it was just fine if he wanted to go with his previous plan for Lent, the carbon fast. He should go right ahead. I didn't want to impose on him or throw a wrench in his plans. But as the service was coming together, we stumbled upon the text Becky read today about the extravagant love of the woman with the alabaster jar. The words really spoke to me, and perhaps the Holy Spirit was nudging me. Then I happened to come across this verse, which sealed the deal. From Acts 26, God has helped me, and so I stand here today, telling all people, small and great, that I have seen. So here we go. Those of you who know me probably know that context is huge for me in all facets of my life. I can't stand hearing a story without knowing all the details. But why are they there? And who else was there? And when did this happen? And I'm sure some of you might even find that funny. But thank you for not telling me. So when I read this message from Mark, I had to dig deeper. So what's going on at this time in Jesus' ministry? In the few verses before Jesus was at Bethany, we learn this. In only 2 days, the 8-day festival of Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, would begin. We're talking about the Passover. 2 days before, Jesus would begin his journey to the cross. The high priests and religion scholars were looking for a way they could seize Jesus by stealth and kill him. They agreed that it should not be done during Passover week. We don't want the crowds up in arms, they said. So behind the scenes, not facing Jesus, they are plotting. Mark continues. Jesus was at Bethany, a guest of Simon the leper. While he was eating dinner, a woman came up carrying a bottle of very expensive perfume. When I first read this text, it was in the NIV version, which paints an interesting picture. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper. Reclining? Jesus reclining? Wow, he was totally chilling out while dudes are out there plotting to kill him, which I think he knows. And he's reclining? It's a great image. And then a woman. Mark does not tell us who this woman is, and I kind of like that. She's any woman, anonymous. A woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. When I first read this, I thought, wow, alabaster, that sounds really valuable. Apparently not. Alabaster was a common container in the Near East. The snowy gypsum shone smooth and translucent when polished. Easily carved, it formed ornate boxes, jars, vases, and flasks, but the container was ordinary. What mattered most, and what still matters today, is the treasure the container holds. When I read nard, all I thought of was lard. So of course I just focused on the jar, because that just didn't sound very good to me. But pure nard was rare, made from the aromatic oil, extracted from the roots of a plant grown mainly in India. So it had to have been imported. The woman could not have picked it up at Walmart or even Macy's. In fact, there is no perfume today that compares to its worth, approximately $30,000 a bottle. And yet, opening the bottle, she poured it on his head. Some of the guests became furious among themselves. That's criminal, a sheer waste. This perfume could have been sold for well over a year's wages and handed out to the poor. They swelled up in anger, nearly bursting with indignation over her. What a waste. What an extravagant, exorbitant, unnecessary display of emotion. The whole bottle, really? Wouldn't a few drops have been more than adequate? And why the hair? The whole scene was messy and not at all proper or orderly. Variations of this story appear in all 4 Gospels, and it's clear the guests were the disciples. And according to the Gospel of John, it is Judas who voices his displeasure. The text even gives us some insight into his comments. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. But Jesus said, "Let her alone. Why are you giving her a hard time? She has just done something wonderfully significant for me. You will have the poor with you every day for the rest of your lives, whenever you feel like it. You can do something for them. Not so with me." She did what she could when she could. She pre-anointed my body for burial, and you can be sure that wherever in the whole world the message is preached, what she just did is going to be talked about admiringly. The woman knew. Somehow she knew, and she believed. While the disciples were still bickering, still not getting the fact that Jesus' time with them was limited, she gave extravagantly by helping him prepare. She couldn't take away his pain, couldn't do what would be asked of him, yet she gave so much. Others thought it was ridiculous. I find it fascinating that right after this extravagant display, Judas completely loses it. The verses go on. Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the cabal of high priests, determined to betray him. They couldn't believe their ears and promised to pay him well. He started looking for just the right moment to hand him over. So the woman with the alabaster jar, between their plotting and Judas's betrayal. The woman's hope didn't lie in what she could get from Jesus. Her joy lay in what she could give. Judas, on the other hand, was after all he could get. The woman came with abandon. Judas came with an agenda. The woman heard what Jesus was saying, and she responded. Judas heard, but did not understand. The woman held nothing back. Judas gave nothing up. What kind of heart do you have? Is it extravagant with gratitude, or tight-fisted with greed? Extravagant love is rarely understood. Our family sponsors several children through World Vision. In fact, each of our children sponsors a child. We often receive pre-made cards or activity books like this from World Vision, where we can write a personal message and send it off. One night about a month ago, Pat was out of town, and we had received several of these storybooks about Easter, and I thought it would be a great idea to sit down and write notes and send them off quickly, so I could mark that off my list. Brian quickly wrote his note to his child, Glad, who was a little boy from Zambia, and then he went upstairs while the rest of us were still writing. And as I'm getting ready to send everything off, Brian comes downstairs and asks, "Can we send money in there?" I was kind of perplexed. Brian knows that we make a monthly contribution, so honestly I wasn't sure what he was really asking. I don't remember exactly, but I wouldn't be surprised if I said something like, "You don't have to do that." I was busy, distracted, and probably a little annoyed, assuming he was going to ask me to put in more of my money, which would then start a discussion I really didn't want to have. Then I looked at the table. With every World Vision mailing, there is a sheet where you can choose to send additional funds. Brian had not seen the sheet. I had seen it with every mailing and had never sent it in before. So after a long pause, I explained to Brian that we could not send cash or coins with the letters, but if he wanted to, I would read him the choices, and if he had money to spend, I would make sure it got there. What I forgot is that before Pat left, he had given each of the kids their monthly responsibility money, like an allowance. They look forward to it all month and often have planned uses for the money well before it's received. These are the choices on the sheet. You could give a gift, which would be multiplied 11 times to provide life-saving medicines and supplies. You could give a gift to World Vision for children in the same village who don't have sponsors. Or you can give a gift that would help send the cards. Brian was very sad by the thought that children could die from infections that were very simple to treat here in the U.S. And after reading all the choices, he replied, "Wow, this is hard." Not, "Wow, this is hard to part with my money," but, "Wow, how can I choose?" Suddenly he started telling me how how much to write in each of the blanks. And I asked, well, how much are you giving? And without pause, he replied, all of it. All of it. I was speechless. But no, of course I wasn't. So I probably said, are you sure? He just looked at me. So he completed the form, and he gave it back. He gave back all the money he had just received. Later, Jacob and Liddy saw his form on the table and said, what's that? And I explained what Brian had chosen to do. And their response was, we can do that? Apparently we can. They all gave me back their money, which I put in our family offering container in the kitchen. And Pat got home, he asked, what's all this money? Extravagant love. Rarely understood. Jesus laid down his life knowing full well he wouldn't walk away alive. This transaction cost him everything, yet he still gave. And that's not just impressive, it's revolutionary. Jesus laid down his life for you and me. He didn't have to do it. He could have spoken a word and 10,000 angels would have flown to his rescue. But instead, he chose not to use his own power. He humbled himself and chose the way of sacrificial death. And there was never a hint of selfishness in his sacrifice, no self-interest, not a hint of mixed motives. Why? Why did he do it? Out of love. Extravagant, lavish, life-changing love. Not just in words, but in action. Sometimes it hurts to give extravagantly, physically, emotionally, maybe even financially. Is the woman with the alabaster jar a rare example? No. You may find it in unexpected places, but it's there, maybe even in your own heart. There may often be a struggle. Perhaps the woman waited in the back room, gazing at the jar. Can I? Should I? Will I? Or perhaps she just acted.